Hey, welcome everybody. All right. Gotta do a couple things here. Excuse me. Gonna be a little bit slow to start here, so if you're getting coffee or having a glass of water or something, or you need to get up another time, feel free. I'm gonna try to use a headset so I'm not too loud. All right. But thank you for joining. And tonight I'm going to talk about some pretty, I guess you could say, some pretty controversial things, but I'm going to try to do it in a way that's not so much so. And I'm trying to use this as a template for how to have, I guess, which isn't to say that I'm best at it. So test, 1, 2, 3. Hopefully that still sounds all right to everybody. If not, I can go into my tester here and everything like that. But please tell me if I don't sound good, and I'll switch out my headset right away. Sorry, still got a couple of things to do with my connection here. All right, almost done. And then let's put this on Twitter really quick, because I'd like to have a larger discussion here. So feel free to chime in on some of these topics if you have questions about it. But I wanted to talk about things that might be going on in the future. That there's, a lot of signs, a lot of people kind of have their ears to the ground about events that may be, I guess you could say, manufactured potentially in the future, without really getting too much into detail about all that entails. But folks kind of have a sense that something might be sort of put out there as a fiction or a partial fiction to sort of shock and awe the American population into submission, since COVID seems to be, people are kind of over it and getting out to having normal lives again. And then it really brought to, I think the intention was to create a lot of fear in people, and they get them to stay inside and get them to be more submissive, especially after they, experienced a lot of loss, which hasn't, subsided really when you think about it. Quite a few people still are experiencing a great deal of loss to their businesses or their livelihoods relative to their jobs and things. So, and then, not to sound negative here, guys. Hang on really quick. I got to type this out here. So I titled this one, our national D.O.R. exorcism. And I want to talk about what that entails, because really never more so than now has it been more evident that we really are in something along the lines of a spiritual battle. And I think those of us who figured it out, we don't all have to agree on like what that spirit is or whatever. I think to some degree we have to have some types of agreements on it. But what I mean to say though is that, a lot of people just sense something's just basically wrong with our news cycle, and that, beyond the normal faking of things or the normal whatever, like it just seems to have gone on overdrive as of late. And so when I talk about a national D.O.R. exorcism, I've been kind of doing it independently with what I call energy balancing, which is that I go to various locations and I do these things called full metal disclosure. I'm conscious and aware that I get the attention of quite a few people, and that, they're incentivized to follow me to wherever I'm going next, one way or the other. And not in a bad way or anything like that. I just sort of, I kind of create a way to make it easy for those people to, track me down and then be able to follow what I'm doing relative to my disclosure material in those locations. That was for a while. I was doing it that way, not as much lately. not for any particular reason or whatever, but that was just a method that I used more on my coastal areas. I did it there because I could establish locations that were near the beach or near the coastal highways. They get a large amount of traffic or can be easily situated near where people can see inside and gain access to my material by listening and viewing from a distance. A little bit of like a line of sight remote viewing that doesn't require psychic ability. But if you have technology available to you, it's just an old school way of me kind of going like, hey, I'm going to let you surveillance me. That's all I do effectively is I open myself up within those environments when I was doing it back then. That was my incentive. And I know that sounds a little weird unless you understand like the nature of shadow banning, like how specific they can make it and how they can limit very specific parties from seeing your material. So that's part of a large part of what incentivized me to do that, because my information in particular, if more people had seen it or would see it or could see it, um, they would understand just how lied to and tricked to they are across the board. I don't really care what perspective you have politically or where you fall left, right, within that paradigm. If you're still there, I would argue it's not really the best place to be for your for your own well-being. It's just it's kind of a nonsense paradigm anymore, and it's some place that we need to ascend out of. Duality thinking. The two-party system doesn't really work, and a lot of these other countries that we as Americans are very critical of, some have dozens of political parties that are all have their own unique value structure, and they're not just limited to a couple of ones that neither nobody in America really likes, like we have. We're all like, well, it's just so simple. I know we have freedom of choice, but that's so funny. Actually, I've been talking lately about Devo, right? And Devo has a song called "Freedom of Choice" that has this great line, or like a way that they kind of go with the chorus. So it says, freedom of choice, that's what you want. Freedom of choice is what you got. Freedom from choice. Like they alternate it from freedom of choice is what you got. Freedom from choice is what you want. Freedom of choice is what you got. Freedom from choice is what you want. It was just their observation on how ridiculous our system can be here in America, where we have so many options available to us by virtue of what was created for us here to start off with. Flawed, yes. Perhaps the people weren't quite where we would expect them to be today. Guys, here's the reason why I feel like I want to bring this up before I get deeper into this discussion. There's all these talks about like how should we change America to be accommodating to this or that or more welcome, blah blah blah. Look, guys, I used to be a person that was pretty critical of America's history, and I think as I became an adult, and again, I'm not criticizing anybody because of their youth or anything who feels this way. I'm just explaining to you that when I was younger, I wouldn't have been that much in disagreement with some of the more radical liberals and leftists that you find out there. The music that I listened to was inspired by that way of thinking. To this day, I still listen to some of those bands, and I think that that's what happened over the last year or so. Is I had to completely reevaluate, what are the values of everybody? I mean, did I get hoodwinked, into thinking that this was something that was just like certain types of expression when really there might have been a deeper goal? Again, sometimes it's right out there in the open, but you don't really take it at face value until you see the results. And so that's why I make appeals to people like, is this really what you thought that you were getting into? Is this really what you wanted? When you thought that this was the way to go, when you're talking about like changing America from this to that. Here's what I'm going to make it as an appeal to you. A lot of you maybe who are there, you might like look back on yourself, because like some of you are kind of younger that are part of these Antifa groups or some of the other social justice groups. I don't think I'm not talking about the ones that are more duped into going there, not the ones that know that they're criminals or running trafficking organizations like some of them are. Quite a few are. I mean, that's really what their goal is, and social justice is really just a cover for running, a mafia that does a lot of information technology transfer while pretending to be doing something completely different. And then these elaborate LARPs and staged riots and things like that, they get other real people angry and aggravated. Hey, touche. Then all those people out there start really battling each other and really going to war. And then they basically achieve two goals. They get away with being traffickers. They kind of put on this show in front of everybody. And then that show oftentimes produces real people to do real things. And that's why now I'm trying to make appeals to people to say, look, once you know that game, like really get that it's happening with those protests and riots, that you have people that are staging these values. They don't really even feel this way. If that hasn't become painfully obvious to you the last year, that a lot of these people were total frauds. You saw, like, after the last time I said this, like about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I put out a presentation here on a live thing that I was a little bit critical of how things were kind of going with BLM, because I was like, don't you guys understand? Like, remember that Public Enemy song, Night Train? Don't you understand that some of those folks are riding the night train? They don't care about you. And it was bizarre. Like, within about 4 or 5 days, the head, she quits. And then another guy gets I think somewhere like 50 or 60 different like child abuse accusations levied against him. And I was trying to explain to people that quite a few people with those types of histories are hiding within these types of movements. They kind of tuck away with you folks that really feel this way and are looking just, for, greater justice within what goes on in the streets, because some of you have some legitimate issues relative to, your observations with police officers. They're not all squeaky clean, guys. I've never said that in case anybody felt like I said that. Yet I still believe that we need law enforcement. We should be backing them. And that, when we have, good people out there that are risking their lives to help out, that, yeah, we should be kind of going out of our way to make that easier for them and not more difficult. That's all. That's how I feel now. Now, look, I don't disagree with protests, and I feel like people do have the right to do all those things, just in case you're wondering. So again, it's about finding balance, guys. You have to understand, like, you can't let the media steer you so aggressively in one direction or the other, because they really want this polarity, and they're manufacturing so many of the things that you get upset about. They're literally putting actors out there to get it all staged and worked up, and then people start to follow suit and go like, yeah, whoa, let's do that. And this is the problem. They kind of like make it allowable, and then they reinforce it by constantly getting back on the media cycle and saying, putting out the message and saying, like, accept it, accept it, accept it. And that's why a lot of people are kind of, especially that are more conservative of nature, are saying, like, no, we really don't accept a lot of your changes when it comes to pronouns and things like that. And I got to be honest with you guys, as much as I've always been generally like okay with like people being who they are, like I'm just not okay with a lot of these things changing the way that people are asking them to, and like making it to where everything is crossed into one mono, gender, and one, like, we all have to be the same gender, and you have to have people that have like physical male capability that think that they're women play on the same team as women, and then things like that. Like, come on, you guys, like there's like absolutely, like, they're even arguing these things, right? I don't even want to have that discussion here, because that's not what this forum is for. But what I'm saying is that the what these are designed to do, you have to understand at some point. You have to start taking some of those people that are more conservative a little bit more seriously, and understanding that there is a destabilization of the very what makes us a country, like, successful as a nation, how we develop talent, how we have people that are more intelligent, that are more scientifically advanced, that we just have a more competitive workforce and creative force. And within America right now, I feel like what has been going on very aggressively the last decade, but I think it's been ramping up as we've been getting more and more foreign ownership within our media organizations, even though there was always a problem within media corruption and MSM corruption relative to the fake news cycle. Okay. But I think that I'm having, what I'm talking about here when I talk about that we needed a sort of like a D.O.R exorcism is, I think what you need to do is start, like, the things that are your biggest push button issues that people tend to make you the most angry about and get the most controversial about. It's just a matter of just making the decision that you're going to review it from a few different other perspectives for a change. Like, make an idea in your mind that you're going to learn more. You're going to look at other media outlets and say, like, maybe I need to just like find out what other groups say about this and challenge my paradigms and challenge how I think about these issues, right? One thing that I've tried to do within my own way of communicating things is to separate, the policies of governments from the people, and to make sure that I always state that clearly. If I have criticisms of things that are going on, and to also have internal accountability relative to my discussions. I don't think that we can run around having criticisms of another nation without having some degree of like saying like the same way I would do if I was having a discussion with a person that I was trying to point out something that I thought was flawed. Do I come at them and just go like, well, here's all the things wrong with you, as if, I've never done anything wrong, right? So I can't do that. So again, I feel the same way about when I'm discussing these things to these countries, what was behind Russiagate, for example? The reason why I'm explaining to you guys that I have a strong sense that there might be something that they're going to plan that's going to, and maybe just having these discussions like this will head it off. I hope. I'd rather be wrong about these things than right. But the reason why I feel like they're going to try to plan something within America that's going to be another one of these types of staged events that, look, a lot of people may believe it, but I think that the jig is up, or whatever you want to say, as far as like their ability to like put these things on to everybody and make them, believe it effectively, or force them to believe it, because like if you don't, you'll look like a tinfoil hat person. So here's all I'm asking for, guys. When these events do happen, like, number one, if you have an alternative, narrative to what they're presenting in the media, I would say just like really try to present it responsibly to where people will take it a little bit seriously and don't go willy-nilly with like 1,000 different theories on what happened. But make sure you're not like letting them lead you into the investigation and all things you should focus on. The thing I've noticed is anytime they do one of these staged events, they want you hyper focused on certain details. And then what you really start to learn is the devil is truly in the details. It's the things that you normally would never even think about associating with the case. And so, that whole thing that happened in Denver, like, it's such a non-issue now, but like, there's this guy named Matt Doloff, and he was this Channel 9 News media outlet in Denver. And it was like last summer, I think, that this happened, summer into the fall time frame. I think it was getting pretty close to like October-ish, September, October. And that thing just stinked to high heaven. I mean, there was all kinds of fakeness about that. And, you had Antifa down there. You had some BLM people down there. You had some people that were very common media presences within all of these protests. And there was a lot of speculation on, did that really happen the way they say it did? And in this case, it was a reporter's security guard, this guy, Matt Doloff, that allegedly shot this guy that owned this company called, his name was Lee something. I can't remember his last name. I'll have to look it up, but he owned this company called Crossfire Hats. And so what I started learning about this is like the devil was in the details. Again, like they always say that phraseology. There was something very occulted about what was going on there, whether the whole thing was a deception or it actually happened or it's a mixture of both. It felt to me like another one of those things where it's just there to confuse people and then get you not focused on something that's really distant in the background relative to all these people. So like I was learning that Doloff had this huge farm, and there was all these people online that were talking about this. They were like learning about one of the other guys that was like stoking the flames of the fight, how he had all these like occulted connections. He was studying things involving black magic and Scientology and something else. Like he had this strange mix of things that he was like into at an occulted level, and posting pictures online of like him doing rituals. And so this led me to think that there's something going on with that that's more occult in nature. Yet I've kind of observed that even though in films it's okay to discuss like, like as if it's only fiction, as if it's only something you would see on like a show like CSI Investigations or Law and Order, like why do they act like these things don't happen in nature? Like people don't do these highly occulted ritualistic things. And when they do, you just don't really hear about them in the way that they truly are. Why did these things occur? So I mentioned that because again, that was like kind of a way to stoke flames. There was like the BLM Antifa component to it. There was this thing where you're designed to like either argue for the guy who's a patriotic American who owned crossfire hats, who quote got caught in the crossfire, right? Like, did these things happen, or did they choose him as a victim specifically because he had a company of that name? Or is there this staged aspect that was designed to cover up the data, and they actually integrated a real assassination on camera? The whole thing could have been 100% fiction, guys, ladies and gentlemen. And you have to think this through a little bit, that these people really do have larger, like the people who own the news station out there. You just have to look into the ownership of the news station. Then you look, okay, so how did that get formed? Who owned it before then? What's the name of these companies? Like, what are their interests relative to other companies? Then you start seeing all the connections. What are their real ethos, and what are their real values? What are their, this is what you need to start digging deeper on with some of these stories relative to media organizations, especially. I'm telling you, because Putin and Trump, they seem to know something, is all I'm telling you. And there's like a lot of things going around relative to the election results coming in some of these states like Georgia and Arizona, and that a lot of people kind of have their ear to the ground and are thinking that there is this possibility that there may be like something that could potentially happen with a recall to the election. Now, I'm not the kind of person that says those kind of things easily, because again, but I'm not going to not say them just because of this reason. I don't like being associated with a lot of the QAnon nonsense, even though I said that I'm cool with the people that kind of were into it. I'm like, look, guys, I'm friendly to you because I can tell that those of you who are being duped by it, that I can tell you care about our country. And if you have some spare time when you're not playing with the Riddler's latest cryptogram, you can come on over to my channel and I'll actually tell you something like straightforward without making you guess. Sound like a good deal? Don't even charge you for it. Yeah. Now, again, well, let me put it this way, guys. I very much need contributions to start flowing into the channel to keep it going. And I will be spending more time on the channel and more regularly if I can make that a reality. I've got to find some type of subscription model, because the last month it's just been throttled down to next to nothing. So, anybody who has contributed, thank you. But it's been what, I'm having a hard time understanding if it's happening purely because of like a hacking scenario, or if it's just because it's been, a little bit less material that I've been putting out. But you guys are going to probably understand why soon and everything like that. I have to take my time with doing certain types of documentaries, and then what the things that I reveal and when I reveal them, or how I do, or where I'm at in particular in any given time. That all I have to do on certain timelines. So not being cryptic or anything like that. That's just the reason why. All right. So when I was watching the latest thing involving Biden and how we kind of joined Putin over at that summit to have a conversation, and noticing the body language of one leader relative to another, Putin being more relaxed but still quite professional, Biden looking kind of like, again, he really doesn't seem there, guys. So I don't even know what to make of that. He kind of seems like the Stepford, husband or something like that. And like he's like a robot on autopilot, and not articulating himself very well, and seems a little bit lost. And it seems like that was like by design. And the irony is that, Kamala Harris doesn't really have significantly, what I want to try to say here. It's not like she's going through the same types of issues, but she seems equally incompetent, honestly, when it comes to even answering like the questions of these reporters here. And they're giving her the same type of softball safe environment scenarios as they gave Biden. And it's ironic, she's supposed to be able to handle these things, right? And we're looking increasingly like a joke to the world. And it's bad. It's weird how people accused us of looking like a joke to the rest of the world when Trump was the president. But in all reality, guys, I mean, um, he actually had some pretty good balance going on with relative to some of these world leaders. And I think that, you know, whether you like the guy or not, and I'm not going to say that I was ever like a huge Trump fan or anything like that, but I did find some common ground relative to some of the things that he was doing, enough so to where I could say that he wasn't, he wasn't a bad president in my estimation. I think we just disagree on how to approach certain things, maybe at a social level, and there's things that I can improve upon, certainly, that people would probably set me aside and go like, man, you really need to work on that. And that's all I would ever do with this guy. But I would say it in the way, like, out of love. I wouldn't say it out of a way out of like, like, hey, you, that's all. And when I saw that he signed an executive order to end human trafficking, I decided, look, I'm going to take the guy at face value that he cares about this issue and that he wants to dedicate the resources to ending it. Because in my estimation, ending human trafficking, especially relative to child trafficking, you solve so many other issues simultaneously. And that's one of the reasons why I think it never gets resolved, is that you get so close to other ecosystems that people are kind of like going, yeah, well, you got to take a step away from this person. You can't look any deeper into this. And that creates whatever, right? Because they always tie these economies together. Things that involve drugs will often involve, like human trafficking. And so people that are addicted to drugs, they don't really give a that there's people being hauled in the same truck or the same whatever, shipping container as the drugs. They just want their drugs. They don't really give a crap how they get here, right? And so this becomes the problem, is that there's the criminal underclass that kind of handles the logistics. They always know how to basically merge economies in such a way where one side that would probably never be inclined to protect another doesn't know it is, or does without consciously understanding that it is, kind of thing. And it's just, they're very clever at doing this. So why do I want to talk about this whole thing with Putin and Trump? Sorry to be dancing around this topic, because I'm not trying to. It's because I really did observe here that when he said send him his warmest regards, and let me find that article here because I thought it was pretty funny. It says Trump again denies. Hang on, really quick. I'll put it on the screen. Hang on. All right. All right. Sorry, my screen isn't very big here. I gotta. All right. Yeah, it says Putin. Trump again denies Russian election interference, tells Biden to give Putin my warmest regards. Well, look, guys, without getting into too much detail, if you know me, then. All right. Should I get into the details? So I have an aunt, and her last name is Warma, and she's blacklisted from Russia. So, I'll let you figure things out on your own schedule. But she's a retired Department of Justice attorney. And that's how she got blacklisted from Russia, as she was connected to the Roman Seleznev case, the cybercrime case, the guy that like stole some credit card numbers. And I mean, I guess it was a pretty significant amount of money, but it wasn't like international espionage to the best of my knowledge. And his sentence was like over 30 years or something like that. And they went to all like this effort to like go and snag him from another country and everything in some really unconventional kind of shady ways. And so when you think about that, in contrast, Russia gave this guy Paul Whelan, who isn't even a U.S. national. He just happened to have a U.S. affiliation, but he's actually holds 4 passports: UK, like Ireland, Canada, and the United States. And so they, like the UN, or not the UN, but the ambassador and the ambassador spokesman here in the U.S. was always trolling Russia about that, like going, hey, you got our person over there and this is a travesty. But they gave the guy like 16 years relative to the 30 years we gave a person for credit card numbers. And the other guy was actually like trying to steal information about Russians and, like Russian, like, intelligence professionals and assets and spies and things like that within Russia. And so when you compare one thing to the other, and, it's, the guy got half the sentence for something that was really espionage relative to we gave 30 years to a guy that was in a credit card cybercrime type thing. So anyways, yeah, I'm not looking for classified information, in case you're wondering. That's not my whole point here. It's like what I'm explaining to you guys is that the what I think is really going on here is that there's some knowledge here that a lot of shenanigans went on with the United States election. And no, Trump, it wasn't Russian interference. It wasn't whatever, and this all got proven over and over again with Russiagate, that the Russians aren't interfering. They aren't doing what these people are saying that they're doing. So it's like, at what point does they give up on this narrative and just stop saying that, Russia's responsible for doing all of this crap in, with our elections and things like that? It doesn't really even make any sense. Now, does it make sense that, like, Trump would send praises to Putin, and Putin would send praises to Donald Trump? Sure, I think it does. And that doesn't mean that one country's kissing the ass of the other. I think it's just diplomacy. I think these guys had some genuine diplomacy. It's not a perfect relationship that America has with Russia, but, I think with the right leader in charge, that, yeah, we could get to a place where there's mutual respect, that we don't have one country trying to dominate over the other relative to innovations, because I really feel like that's more of a Western interests thing, and not so much a thing the American people would seek to do. I don't think Americans as peoples would want to see, like us advocate for like reducing Russia's ability just to fairly compete with the rest of the world. But that seems to be what they try to do. So what I'm saying to you is like the military, I don't think it's like our function to basically say like, well, like if they're making these great innovations relative to like a vaccine, for example, not that I'm a fan of vaccines or whatever, but there's always these efforts to sort of say like, well, we don't want you to have that, or we don't want you building a pipeline of gas to Germany, something that really wouldn't even involve America, except that their energy interests might be diminished, or their Western energy interests might be diminished relative to Russia's. So, I mean, where, at what point do you just, is one country respecting the other and potentially just being, fair competitors and respectful competitors and partners? To me, I just want to be able to separate like what's going on with governance and everything like that from the people in general. And then after we get past that, whatever else happens, right? But I think now that we're seeing like in Georgia, um, like a lot of the things that we're seeing within Georgia and Arizona is pretty relevant now, because we're seeing, the election, actually some things being revealed that there were, some states that were stolen from Trump. And so, this time they really can't blame Russia. They can't, I mean, again, all these narratives have failed historically. So what can they blame this time? They avoided these audits. They didn't want to see them happen. And, guys, the thing is like, I promise you, no matter who I would personally want for president or not, I would never allow my side, whatever side that I'm on, just to simply steal an election from somebody, or a whole bunch of Americans, or deny them their votes. And, what I think the mainstream media was trying to do was try to set up the American population to perceive Donald Trump as some type of modern Hitler, when he just isn't and never was. Is he flawed? Sure. Is he perfect? Hell no. And I think he was mostly just an extension of like the reform in America that was being led primarily by insiders within the military that just have more access to information and would be able to understand that there could potentially be some election fraud. But then once you understand that, like, what if it's not your role to collect that type of intelligence or have that type of information, and the relevant party that's supposed to prevent those things from being fraudulent don't do their job? the FBI has proven over and over again that they're just an extension of the DNC. They don't really do anything to challenge any of those narratives, guys. They won't protect you the same way as they will a person who has a democratic interest. I'm sorry, that's just the reality. I learned this because when I tried to report things to the FBI, I was simply disregarded as if I didn't exist. And I think a lot of that stemmed from the fact that I'm just simply friendlier to conservatives the last 5 years, especially. I just learned more about their positions to where it wasn't simply that I was tolerating conservatives. It's just simply I was like, oh, wow, that's why you feel that way. Wow, now that we've had this larger discussion, I get that part of your position way better. And I don't think you're just a xenophobe. I don't think that that's informed by racism in some cases, whatever it is, right, guys? Because a lot of these issues, when you only take the mainstream media narrative, hang on really quick. I'm going to show you why this all, in case you're wondering why this might, hang on. In case you're wondering what this all is related to, and I show you this, why I had this on the screen. Trump again denies Russian election interference, tells Biden to give Putin my warmest regards. Okay, it's because this article here, Russia blacklists U.S. justice officials related to celebs in detention. Okay, Russia has blacklisted 4 U.S. Department of Justice officials: Charles Seth Wilkinson, Ethan Ray Aronson, Catherine Warma. Now look, guys, I'm not one of Trump's advisors, and I don't know what these guys are really talking about, but selection of words when they're just a few words in a soundbite are done for a reason, especially when it's a guy like Donald Trump. So I have tried to communicate my information about what I do know in this country, okay? And I'm just telling you that the reason why I know a little bit about manufactured events is because I know a little bit more about how things involving, well, what would be perceived as crisis actors are. And again, I'm not telling you that whatever, it's just that I understand how crisis actors work. If you don't know what that is, please look it up. We can do a quick review here. Just so people can't say I'm doing something, whatever. Crisis actor is a trained actor, role player, volunteer, or other person engaged to portray a disaster. A disaster victim during emergency drills to train first responders such as police, firefighters, or EMS personnel. Crisis actors are used to create high fidelity simulations of disasters in order to allow first responders to practice their skills and help emergency service organizations to prepare and train in realistic scenarios as part of full-scale disaster exercises. So what this would entail, though, folks, is like, once you understand that something like this works, then you know that there's entire networks of actors that just do this for a living. Then you have to ask yourself, what kind of demand is there for this service involving crisis actors? Could you really actually make a business out of this? Could you really actually form this into something that's an actual whatever? All right, so let's talk about that. There is a business. Now, don't forget this. Russia knew to ban these 4 people. And if they're going to do something that extreme, I got to think that because of this diplomacy purposes, they don't just do these things willy-nilly. They know that that's going to have a negative effect on sanctions and things like that potentially. So they usually don't do something like this unless they have a good reason. It's not me saying one good thing one way or the other or whatever. It's just from my own experience, guys. I don't really have a relationship with my Aunt Catherine, but yeah, she married into my family, and I haven't talked to her in like like almost a decade. And it's been, I don't know, about 6 years since I talked to, maybe 5 or 6 years, I'd say. About Christmas, I think 2015 is probably the last time I ever saw her husband. Just to give you guys some context that I know things. Can you agree? Do I know things? Yeah, I know things. I lived in Washington, D.C. as a child. I turned 5 years old there. I wasn't there very long, but my father served under Senator Warren Magnuson back then. And so we tend to have some connections to things involving Department of Justice. Got a brother that has a connection to the National Security Directorate, things like that. People that were hired by deep state, labs that do black budget projects, and they're close to me. Okay, now I'm not involved with those things, and I don't do those things, and I never have volunteered to participate in them. I am not a crisis actor. I have no interest in being a crisis actor, not at all. All right, but they do exist, and there is an ecosystem behind it. So why am I mentioning this? Why am I telling you that Trump again denies Russian election fears, tells Biden, send Putin my warmest regards. Warmest regards, Putin. Look, let me tell you something. Trump loves wordplay, and he does it in ways that, look, whether you like the guy or not, I'm a fan of that particular method. I'm just telling you, I know how it works. So I wasn't offended. So I think that whether you agree with me or not, all I can tell you is that, look, they can structure events that are hyper realistic. Crisis actors can, with the right people that are insiders. They can manufacture evidence, events, all of it, because these are people that make the television shows that are about collecting it, about investigating it. I mean, you're talking about the producers behind things that involve simulations of law enforcement, so they can effectively become law enforcement environments that they enter into. And certainly people overseas within other countries, relative to the way their citizens are treated by our Department of Justice, have seen this ecosystem from the outside looking in, and that people here in America oftentimes point it out, but can hardly ever really draw definitive lines to it the way that I potentially can, and wish that more would take seriously, including reformers who want to actually make our FBI something other than a global effing joke, which it is. It's just become to the point where everybody's going like, it's your FBI doing this. They're partnering with Hollywood and the mainstream media. They're partners who are mockingbird journalists. America seems to be the ones that are the most clueless about it. Got news for you guys. We really are. I mean, as a country, so far, I think now, stop worrying about whether or not you're going to be like the tinfoil hat person or whatever, and just be more willing to accept that we all got duped and we should be smarter now, okay? I know it kind of F's with our egos a little bit to think like, how did we accept so many lies for so long? But I'm going to explain to you how it can work. And again, it doesn't mean this is the way it is working. I'm just telling you, I got him saying warmest regards. I got an aunt that was with the DOJ, now retired, but did put away a Russian citizen, and then resulted in her getting blacklisted. And she goes by the name Warma, warmest regards. Okay. I'll let you decide if that means anything. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Why might they be saying that they feel like there could be some fictionalization of events? Because crisis actors need jobs. So who would hire a crisis actor and who would train a crisis actor? Well, let's take a look at that. All right. So that's something. Okay. Now, here's where, again, I have to say, guys, I think I know what's going on and why. And I'm not going to say much beyond it because I really just can't. But I need you to sort of put two and two together the best way that you can here, if you want to, or you feel like it's appropriate. But until I have somebody that's actually compensating me, because I really do need somebody to start compensating me for how much I've helped others on the outside, not because I'm holding it hostage or anything, guys. It's just because I need to earn a living. That's all. And I do a lot of research that helps people piece these things together and things like that. So, those who wind up benefiting from this, you need to, if you can, I would appreciate if you could show me some love right now, because it would really benefit the channel and me being able to get some parts for the future. I need to do some replacement parts and things like that. So again, I just need to send that as a reminder, guys, because not many people can get this kind of information to you. And I really feel like whenever this big reform happens, please do something to show me some love so I can fix some of these things and I can actually, I don't know, guys. I've put myself on the line for years now, and with next to nothing resources wise. So I appreciate things that people have done, especially this year, guys. Ladies and gentlemen have been like we're really generous, especially earlier in the year, and I want to thank you for that. But if I'm going to keep it going, I gotta get more funding is all. So you guys, I have details down in descriptions before I get into the next part here. Sorry to the commercial, guys, because I want this information to be taken seriously, but I also need those who watch this that are more in the intelligence community, more in those whatever circles, to know that what I just really need is like a place where I can actually just get compensated for my work on a regular basis and not have it be this abstract as soon as I can. So that's just a shout out there for those who can make those types of magical things happen, because I am a person that really likes to work. Not that I love it or anything like that, but when I know I'm doing something good and I'm with the right people, then yes, I am absolutely a person that's very excited about what I do. And that's why I've dedicated myself to this channel and done nearly 1,000 clips, and without charging anything, guys. I just ask people to contribute when they can, if they watch it regularly. So anyways, end of commercial there. So thank you. But anyways, getting back to it, let's look at the link here. Warmest regards. These 4 people, in this case against Russian citizen. All right, why am I drawing a parallel to crisis actors and PROACT, right? Well, because PROACT, I learned, isn't just owned by anybody. And again, I'm not trying to say this means anything or that anybody's doing anything. But then I started learning that, yeah. And they are related, because I found a social media post where, in fact, they're related, and they were even both at the Washington D.C. Pink Hat protest. And so, it's important to mention, folks, because if one's in the DOJ and they're this close to crisis acting, and there's all of these events that keep happening in America. And people from the outside kind of tell us, like, look, guys, we don't want to mess with your guys' affairs or whatever, but you've got some things going on over there. And I think, and guys, when you look at the Boston bombing, you guys understand that Russia warned us, right? And then a lot of people now believe that may have been somewhat of a false flag. Now, if it was, how would they get it staged in an event? How would they stage that event? Well, you would need this to happen. You need to have some type of simulation that was going on simultaneously, and then people that would go along and who are trained to go along. You'd have to have insiders at the FBI and the DOJ potentially. I'm not saying that anybody is or anything like that. I'm just saying that you have to have an ecosystem. And then I guess it would help if you had a relative who was deep in someplace like, I don't know, intelligence services like the NSA or someplace like that, where they had access to, more deep level surveillance to know what's going to happen or what won't happen or what will happen, that kind of thing. Because once you get at the NSA, you have that kind of spooky access to information, and it's pretty trippy, like how much they can detect and predict and everything else like that. So, look, if I didn't have a relative that worked at a national security directorate also, I would say that, well, that's a stretch, except, well, hell, I do have a relative that does work at one of those places, and they typically say that nearly anything that I discuss is garbage and bogus, or couldn't be a thing. They've denied the existence of ley lines, energy lines. They've told me that my interest in numbers is complete garbage and stupid. And guys, it's completely relevant. Like nearly everything that's led me to something larger that's more relevant, especially spiritual things that are kind of beautiful and miraculous, I was discouraged by some of these same people against doing it. And then as I released material, none of them came to me and said, wow, I'm really proud of you for what you've done, guys. And I put out 1,000 clips. And this family that's close to all these things, not a single one of them ever said, hey, Gabriel Cruz, thank you for doing that. Or that's really cool. Or I'm proud of you. Or wow, that was really articulate. Or hell, even if they disagreed with it, to say, like, hey, here's why I disagree with that article. And maybe we can have an intelligent discussion about it. What I have heard, though, is that's dumb, that's stupid. I'm not watching that. I don't care. That's ridiculous. Why would anybody waste their time on that? And I've done some pretty groundbreaking material on energetics and things involving human energy. And pretty much it's been, I'm dumb, is pretty much what I've heard from this collective of people. And guys, I mean, I'm just telling you, I have an IQ that's, I was tested when I was younger, got put into a smart kids class, even though I don't think that I'm linear smart. I do have a pretty significant IQ too. Just saying. And so why I would have so many people when it comes to these topics out of nowhere after I was sort of a golden child, or honored or loved by a lot of them, at least, if not, honored, but at least loved or cared about, that suddenly it all just flipped like 180 degrees several years ago. And like people just started to hate me, or just started to distance themselves from me, or say that the content that I was doing was dumb and ridiculous, or shaming my family. And I'm going, well, wait a second. When this goes to this, goes to this, goes to this, maybe that's why, when I bring my concerns about certain topics to certain people relative to the trafficking organizations and the telecommunications hacks, and the way that certain companies have access to tips lines relative to reporting human trafficking, maybe that's why all these people don't care, even though cybercrime is their particular discipline. And this would be the department that you would go to. It's bizarre that I had all these people that surrounded me that would be at that national level of law enforcement, where it really, who else do you go to? I'm explaining to you my conundrum, ladies and gentlemen. Like, this is one of the reasons why I've been trying to make appeals to, like, the people that watch me by the sidelines. I need to be part of some type of working group, you guys, where we're handling these things or working on them together, because it's it just would make more sense. And yeah, I've got people that do help me on the sidelines, is all. All right. And so what I try to do is, through these live presentations, articulate when things need to change at a more meaningful level. And so all I can tell you is, if it doesn't, then I can do less of this, less of the analysis, because I just can't do it for you. It's, I won't be able to afford to. I'll have to spend my time on other things. That's all. And it's for, I'm articulating these things to you guys in this presentation for a reason. It's because it obviously makes it difficult for a person who's said these things to get out and get a job, and then you find that people within your family will not help you out. They will kind of turn their backs on you, either through fear, or of what others will do to them for talking to me, or they just simply were offended by the way I communicated my material, and act as if I'm like drawing aspersions to people, when I'm really not, guys. I'm just saying that if I'm going to be doing public material and all these other things relative to a bunch of these other topics, and it crosses over into what some of these other people do that are close to me in my life, and I have approached some of these folks and said, hey, what about this? What about this? Can you help with this? And it's always been like, no, we don't know anything about those things, and none of our law enforcement friends would either, and we don't really know, and why don't you just stay home and just collect benefits and just stay by yourself and not say anything? Bye. I actually have had, instead of like encouraging me to get better opportunities, I've actually had certain relatives that were close to me that would normally shun a person for collecting benefits encourage me to be on disability and file for benefits, when I have a perfectly capable mind. Can you believe this? I mean, like you feel like you're raised to be like whatever, right? And it's just, all right. Does that help understand, like folks understand a little bit about the ecosystem relative to crisis acting, crisis actors? Again, I'm not telling you any of these people do any of those things, but when you combine that, I've got one blacklisted official in the family. Their sister owns a crisis actor company. I had a cousin that was in an event that has been commonly called a crisis act or false flag event by many in the media outside of me. And again, I'm not saying it is, but I had a cousin that was in the building when that one happened, on top of all these other anomalies that I found. I didn't even know these things until like about 5 or 6 years ago. They all just started happening. I didn't know about any of these interests. I didn't know that any of these people had these larger, deeper connections. I had to research it on the internet, and I'm like going, wait a second. One relative told me that this aunt was like doing like legal work, more like a paralegal assistant type thing within, a function. And then I find articles linking them to national press articles where like ABC News at the national level, like their national media organization, not local, national, is interviewing them about legislation relative to cyberbullying and cybercrime. Now, I mean, like, I don't think you get like nationwide press coverage like that when you're like, a low level paralegal or something like that within the Department of Justice. I don't think that happens that way, but that's kind of the way it was positioned to me. And so once that proved to be a falsehood, or at least like an exaggeration or an underration or whatever you want to call it, a downplay of somebody's true work history, I started finding it was happening in other circles too, where I had another relative who was at the National Security Directorate, which would be performing operations functions at the National Security Administration level. And so all I'm asking you guys is like, whether you accept this or that, why do certain things happen to me? Just knowing that you have two people in my family that had such significant cybercrime functions. One literally monitors things at an operations level relative to what? The handling of nuclear waste and national security. Is it their job to handle everything in the world? No, but they should know somebody that knows somebody that can help me, right? Wouldn't you, guys? Can we agree? Shouldn't some of these people know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody? All right. So, do some people think that I'm a challenging personality? Perhaps. Maybe that's it. Maybe I just am way too open about myself and who I've been. But to me, I think of that as an asset. At least with me that I've been so honest about who I am and where I've been that all you really should be judging me by right now is like, am I cognizant? Can I figure things out? Do I still have my wits about me after all these things have gone on? And yes, I do. I'm still a pretty talented analyst, and I can do a lot of significant, like nonlinear data crunching and symbolic decryption that a lot of people really wouldn't even be able to figure out. And I know others that have a similar ability that can be tuned and fine tuned and trained and made better. And that once this is all done, you'd have some pretty significant people within the psi realm that could be helping America in significant ways because we deserve it. So I'm making an appeal for that. There's ways that you can work with us and help us out and everything like that, and let us live some normal lives too, and be able to do something good for our country. But we do deserve to be compensated for the efforts that we make at a research level, the types of things that we put out there for people to put under consideration and things like that. I'm doing it this way, but folks, because it's just more important for me to have the truth out. But I do it at the cost of my personal well-being sometimes. So that's why I have to keep making those reminders. So anything you guys can do, I appreciate it, to contribute to the channel. I'll put some of the links actually here in the chat. as well. But yeah, so to get down to it, folks, yeah, no, there's going to be no nuclear war. That ain't going to happen. So when I talk about like events and everything like that, no, I mean that's pretty much like almost like an impossibility. And they just like people to be afraid of it because fear is a powerful way to generate deadly orgone radiation, and that's why the news cycle partially has so much fakery, is because there is a connection, whether or not some people accept it or don't, to the way that nuclear power is derived relative to human materials and human plasma, and that there is to make the bomb, there is a bit of a human Curie element to it. So, I got that as information over a year ago, and so I think that maybe one of the reasons why people within the psi realm aren't given the proper respect is because of what they can generate relative to deadly orgone radiation or positive orgone radiation, depending on the state of mind that they're in at that given time. And I know for the observers of me, it's become increasingly more difficult to put me into dark orgone radiation events where I get stuck or put into loops or whatever, right? It just doesn't happen to me the way that would be ideal for an energy extraction or for this type of, I guess, plasma extraction like they do to a lot of folks. So I think what it's become then now is a game of playing with people's perceptions to justify this more sucking of plasma and like just sort of sapping people of, their energy at a slow level, that where they just sort of accelerate the death cycle, perceived death cycle, I should say, which is the transfer of energy out of the human vessel and into another human vessel or into a container where it's stored for later purposes. And it was discussed in military documentation. I'm not even putting it into any silly nonsense or whatever. Like, there's actual machinery and signal generators associated with and devices associated with the removal of plasma from a human target within the psychotronic generator realm, and not to be confused with some other popularizations of the term psychotronic generator, because I know if you look up that term, a lot of it'll lead to people that are steering you astray and want you to believe that it's something that it's not. It's actual weaponization. I mean, it involves frequencies, signal generators, installed technology. It's a system they call automatic rife. It's like an electromagnetic gun that can just, kind of like slow zap a person and suck their plasma out of them, almost like an X-ray or a gamma ray type gun that's aimed at somebody and just removes life. Except in this case, it has a return mechanism. So when it's aimed at the person, it's not just harming them, it's actually sucking something out of them that's an extractable resource, which is their plasma. And that can be basically bought and sold like a drug. So yeah, welcome there. Yeah, appreciate you joining there, man. I gave very short notice tonight, but I have to do that lately just because I'm in on a weird schedule and taking care of more interpersonal things. And so mostly for good reasons, guys. It's just that, yeah, it has cost me, a little bit of the regular audience on the channel here. So that's why I was saying, guys, like, I need to get back into it, but now I'm kind of in that balance between, I like the what I've been researching has been kind of strange. Like, it's location based research that involves like how information magnetically binds to a specific location, and it's become really fascinating how things are working relative to where I've been. But I'm not going to get into detail about what all that entails right now. But yeah, the research is odd. I was having correlative data. How do I say it, guys? Like, so I was showing you guys like all the things down in California in the desert. Like, I'd go out to the Buckaroo Bonsai filming location, and there was like a post there that says 1933, and it was lined up in another place at 33 degrees from where I was. And these bizarre synchronicities that I know were more than just synchronicities. It's like somebody had access to timelines, to events that were going to happen, and they were leaving markers, almost like geocaching, but geocaching within space-time manipulation. Geocaching, it's getting fascinating. I think that there's something like that going on, and so I've just been really happy about the way things are transpiring overall. I feel like a lot of the research that I've been doing is actually being proven out, and that I've got the right attention of enough of the right people to where they're going like, yeah, obviously what this guy said is possible, and there's examples of it that he can explain intelligently. Holy shit. Now what do we do? Well, I'm just saying, like, let's just start working on solving problems, because that's really what this is good at doing. This type of talent with psi ability is solving problems. Like, you literally get answers magnetically when you're in the right environments. Things just like arrive at you instantly. And I think that's also what's scaring people. It's like they don't want that much truth out there. So I made a joke the other day, so I don't want anybody being menaced by it. It was a joke too for like a friend. Also, like I told them what it meant. But I put like a Santa Claus mask on me, and I said like, hey, like like, even though I know everything that's going on or something like that, I'd be a really lonely guy if I went around ratting on everybody or something like that. So like saying like Santa's cool, man. Don't worry about it. Like, I'm not trying to like freak everybody out with the way information sort of like, eh, I just get answers, folks. It's hard to explain. I'm not like psychic or anything like that. I just can extract answers from environments in ways that kind of freak people out. And I don't always know that I'm doing it. It like sometimes it's like the person will look at me and go like, how did you know what I was just about to say? Or how did you know what I was thinking like that? Or whatever. And they get really freaked out by it. And they think that I'm using technology sometimes, or that there's something else more menacing about it, when it's really that I'm experiencing it. Like, I'm not doing it to anybody. I'm experiencing it. And a lot of times I don't even know that I just blurted out an answer to the question the person was thinking. Like, but it happens. And sometimes the person's like thinking of the question or thinking of something. And then for some strange reason, think of the answer to their question without even trying to consciously do it. In fact, I would argue that it works better when I'm not even thinking about doing it. I just do it, and then it happens. And then it's like, whoa, and it freaks them out a little bit. And then you have to get past that, because it's not always fun. So after a while, I was kind of like going, well, this has been happening to me for years. And so, at some point, like, I just want people to be comfortable around it and not get freaked out about it. But I also realize that what makes that, more realistic is just finding more people that do it and are looking for answers as to why they do it, how they do it, and are looking to fine tune it, because that's kind of like where I'm at. I'm not necessarily wanting to fine tune things or whatever, but I want to at least be in an environment where I know that it's going to have good ramifications when I reveal something, and that it won't be like I blurt something out that is the wrong thing, and that the answer that I kind of extract out of somebody is, again, guys, sometimes I'm around people that they might just be doing something that, like, on an access or security level, and they don't understand why suddenly out of nowhere I said like their project name, or I said like the name of somebody that they're thinking of at that moment. Things like that happen to me, is all I'm saying. So I just don't want folks to be freaked out by it, because I'm not even trying to do it. And again, it used to freak me out when I had people that did it that didn't know that they were doing it too. See, like, I didn't always understand that. So I don't know. Hmm. If my microphone sounds bad, then I don't know what to tell you. I have everything plugged in, so I mean, I can unplug it. It's just there might be more background noise. So I mean, I don't think it'll change the way I'm talking or anything like that. But if you guys like that, all right. Oh, all right. No, dude, like, let's not. I'm really, look, guys. I like, this isn't.
I need you to understand, like if you're in the chat, man, like know that how seriously I take this, So like even if you're making jokes about like that, like this is serious as a heart attack for me, man. So it's cool. Like I'm not trying to be a buzzkill to anybody like that. I'm pretty loose with the way I kind of like block or just remove comments from the chat for that reason. But I've been trying to be like more easy about it. But yeah, dude, like just on that type of crap, just please help out with, because I mean, really, I do try to get the attention of people that actually will take this seriously. So it's like when it just doesn't help. If you're trying to contribute in a helpful way, that's all. If you don't give a shit, that's fine. Then, I can just take it at that level or whatever. But all right. Sorry, man. I was trying to say like politely, like, come on, man. All right. I don't want to get too distracted though. I'm not going to stay on forever here, folks, or anything like that. But I needed this to kind of get out there so that we can kind of like, now that you kind of know that there is things like this that go on, right? That we can speak about it at a more intelligent level and say, like, why do we give so much of our attention to Twitter? Why do we give so much of our attention to these narratives surrounding these criminal enterprises? Where they tell us all this lore about these kingpins, and then like you kind of look deeper into it and you're like going, man, why does this all feel a little bit fake right now? I don't get it, Oh, I know you do, dude. Yeah, I know you do. So I wasn't talking to you, dude. Seriously, it was the other thing before. So sorry about that, man. Yeah, I know you always have good comments, dude. So I'm not talking about that. Yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, you're all good, white boy. Just say, and again, I always have to tell people on the outside, like, that's the person's name in the chat. I'm not going, what's up, white boy? Especially, I don't know what the hell I am, man. So could I call somebody that may be racist for me to do? I have no clue at this time. Like, what are the rules now, man? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about, man. I'm canceling the rules. I just think that we just need to there's so much ridiculousness that are going on with this that, like, I'm just canceling the rules, man. Like, to me, I just feel like I want to get back to when it was okay to have some jokes, and that when we pissed each other off, we got past it and we apologized or didn't apologize and just accepted that somebody else thinks of it differently. That's possible, you guys. It's possible for a person just to perceive things a little bit differently than you and not want to acquiesce to it because they're just not, I don't like saying ready for it. They don't agree with you. And I'm the same way on a lot of these things, guys. I was super tolerant to so many things, but like I've seen it go so aggressive this last year. And if I didn't feel like it was partially a thing that's designed to destructure our country and to cause us problems, I would, I don't know, man. I guess I would be a little bit more like taking a step back and going, well, maybe I'm wrong on this, or maybe I should listen to these people, especially like the pronoun thing. Guys, I was never a person that was like, if somebody wanted to be gay or whatever, to this day, I'm kind of like, fine, go ahead and be gay. I don't care. Do your gay thing. That's fine. I don't care. Whatever. But I don't want somebody like constantly reminding me of all the things that I have to do and acquiesce to and constantly whatever. It's like, yeah, people deserve to have rights. Cool. Yeah, great. Let's get over it. Right. And then everything's all, we can just get past it. And so let's get into that conversation relative to like the sensitivity surrounding. And again, this is risky, guys. So I'm going to ask that if you're here, that we take this one a little like really easy with the way we approach it, but and not because I'm trying to censor anybody, but because it does risk the channel sometimes getting shut down, or it could shut me down for a couple weeks. And like, so when I talked about the Russia thing, like the reason why it's so easy for me to separate all that is because of this, right? Once I saw that there was this connection between my Aunt Catherine, prosecuting this case with a Russian citizen and getting blacklisted from Russia. I see Trump sending his warmest regards. I mean, see, that's like a 3-word thing. Send him my warmest regards. It's like he really wants that anchored. I wonder why. And then, the fact that I learned that within this family, that her sister owns a actor company, and crisis actors are oftentimes connected to things that involve fictionalization of news. Not saying that they are, but they could be, right? That it's the possibility in the ecosystem is all in place to make it a reality. And so I can't deny that if I don't at least acknowledge it and say, like, do you have an answer for this, you guys? I mean, can you just like reassure people that it's definitely not going on? Because every time I look at it, it's kind of like, why do I feel like things that are put out there as mainstream medias like Russiagate all seem to be more like a personal vendetta against a small number of people in America that don't really have this beef with Russia, don't understand why they would have a problem with Russia. Like, why does America not like them? Oh, yeah, they're communists. No, they're not, you guys. They're really not communists. They're not? Oh, I heard Putin like jails like journalists and he's like a communist and everything. No, 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 no. See, the communism, that's over in China. They're called the Chinese Communist Party. Russia's not communist. They're not. The Soviet Union was. Russia's not. But so they get us all into these sort of like these, Russiagate things. They're interfering with our election. They're doing this. They're doing that, And then it always gets debunked and proven to not be true. So what the hell's going on here, you guys? I kept on looking at all this, and then I was like going, I think this is like their nod to each other to say like, I think that people are figuring it out. What that means entirely, I don't know. I guess we'll just figure that out. I don't know. And so what I'm trying to do, guys, is elevate everybody to say, like, behind the scenes, I think once we get past all the mainstream narratives and everything that's going on, you're going to learn that there's people that like try to like make it to where when you say certain countries or you talk about certain issues that it just puts a freeze on the whole discussion. And then sometimes, guys, I get froze by it myself, and I'm really trying not to. So let's all just make agreements on things. Like, number one, separate religions from states, separate people of nations from their governments when you're making criticism. So like me, I don't say like China's killing us or China virus. I don't like that. I don't even like it when they were popularizing the phrase, because it would be consistent with sort of applying a negative connotation to the country. Now, again, guys, I'm not the PC patrol here. I'm saying that I didn't like that characterization of it, because to me, it's more of a CCP thing. The same way, like in the United States, I feel like we should have greater sophistication. And if the CIA did something to us, let's call it what it is and not blame the military. Let's not blame the FBI if it was the CIA. Let's not blame the Army if it was the FBI. Let's not blame whatever, right? And it's jurisdiction wise within the United States, most people don't know where one begins and the other one ends. Hey, by the way, guys, when is it no longer the role of the FBI and it becomes the role of the National Guard? Is there such a time? What happened if like every FBI office disappeared overnight? Who would be the jurisdiction that handles all that? Or who would have to fill the need if we lost like half the FBI overnight? I'm not saying that's going to happen, guys. Don't worry, FBI, you're in no danger. I'm not telling you that you are, but I'm just saying, like, what's going on now? Like, if you ever realize, the guys, that we may have some problems like that, where there seem to be some awareness at some point, like I think quite a few number of people in the FBI are putting a big wool over our eyes on some of these things, then who would handle that and who would address it? Where would we go? Well, if they always say, just for example, hypothetically, there was always mainstream media participation. Well, the mainstream media, they're not going to want this narrative to go either. So what you're going to find are events structured to basically discourage patriotism, discourage respect of America, basically to try to position anybody who questions federal law enforcement at the FBI level, who's completely in the pocket of the DNC. Then you're just, you're doing something wrong to your country. You're a potential terrorist, and they're already actually putting out memos and bulletins saying that what are these crazy QAnon people going to do now that they didn't get their justice? What are they going to do? Are they going to rebel? No, guys. What they're doing is they're laughing their asses off at how silly that you're being, because they know that the only people that are acting erratic right now are your crisis actors that are going around with Trump signs going, "Dirt, dirt, crazy, crazy, dirt, dirt." And all the real people that actually like that president and actually kind of know what he's about, they're all kind of sitting back going like, why do you guys keep sending all these goons to pretend to be us? We know that that's not us. Why are you doing that? They're figuring it out, guys. You badly portray them when you do these things. And I've seen it like so many times. I'm just like, what makes me different than the average group is that I can actually reveal the ecosystem or a potential ecosystem as to how it could actually work. It doesn't mean it is working that way, but it can, you know. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, so here's the thing though. So I try to say like, look, I really respect the culture of China. I like Chinese people. I think it's a really beautiful country. I wouldn't know half the things I know about natural healing, about things involving acupuncture points without that culture. And they have tons of pyramids over there. And I would never want to say or do anything that could compromise my ability to enjoy a good relationship with Chinese people. So I always think about it that way. Equally with Russia. If I had an issue with the country, or the governance of a country, I would try to find out where that specifically lays. And I would never say Russia did this or these people are evil. I would never do that. And I don't know why we have such willingness to play political theater with our current president, who likes to say things like, I looked Putin in the eye and I said, you're evil. I'm looking in the heart of an evil man with no soul, or some shit like that. Do you guys really believe he said that? Because Putin says, I don't remember that. And then he logically goes on to say, like if you watch the interview on NBC, which was pretty freaking cool, he was like telling the NBC reporter, like, you know, in Russian, but they translate it to English. He goes like, does this make sense to you? Like, you guys, like, saying something to the effect of like, you Americans, like, you love the Hollywood and the creation of things. You know, like there's a fiction to your political theater that you just seem to love. No, this didn't happen. When you go to an event like this, the goal is diplomacy. You're not meeting there to have a showdown of political theater. It's not an American election. The point of this is to reach across the aisle, and even if you felt like the person was an adversary, you wouldn't publicly display it in such a way. You would not walk up to a person, and these things just don't happen there, where you go up to a person and go at the showdown and go like, you know, I believe you have no soul. Biden's such a freaking liar. Before he was senile, he was just a liar. Now he's a senile liar, which makes him like, oh my God, no wonder he has to have note cards everywhere he goes. But you contrast that with another sensitive issue right now, because again, somebody sent me like some clips about this, and I was like, wow, I now see it. Look, guys, can we apply the same logic maybe to being Jewish? And I'm asking the question because I have a great interest in Jewish, the religion. Like, I want to learn more about it. And I'm actually, this is like why I've been like very reluctant to talk about the topic, because in a real way, you guys, I'm actually wanting to know more, and I don't know where to go or who to talk to about the varying levels of Jewish religion, culture, and mysticism, because I'm genuinely curious. I actually want to learn more. I learned a lot about Christianity independently. I learned a lot about Islam independently. Where my gap is understanding, the Jewish culture and Judaism in a greater level. And I want to understand the mystic parts of it, because I was getting informational downloads of Jewish mystic principles that I never understood, you guys. So when that happens to you, you feel a little bit closer to something like that, is all I'm saying. Like, I started getting these weird downloads of the Tree of Life and the Sephiroth, I think is what it's called. And I looked it up and showing me that there's people that are all connected, that are creating like a tree of life here on this physical plane, that they all have information that they need to share with each other. And they said that in this download that I got like 5 or 6 years ago, that part of my role would be to help people communicate with one another. So I'm trying to facilitate that. I took that seriously. And so what I'm asking is because I've never fully understood what's going on in Israel. And I still don't. And I'm asking respectfully. I need to have that intelligent conversation to say, Is it possible, and can somebody explain to me, like from different degrees? I would like to talk to different people who have an idea on this, and they can feel free to email me if somebody's Jewish or just has a greater knowledge on Judaism. And I want to have this as like a conversation. I wish we could just have like more where like me and a few other people that want to have this type of discussion just sit down and talk it through. How do I separate as a person who's not Jewish? How do I understand the state of Israel relative to how a person perceives their Jewish identity, how that differs between different forms of Judaism, and like how could I as an individual, because I do understand that there's certain people that identify as being genuinely 100% Orthodox Jewish, like they believe in their religion, they practice it since birth, they wholly live it, they are it, it is them, okay? But some of those people do not believe in the state of Israel, and they believe that it's a corruption of their religion, and they believe that it doesn't represent them. And then I know that there's a whole other group of people that believe rigidly in the state of Israel, and that if you dare question the state of Israel to them, they would see it as a perceived attack on their Jewish ethnic identity, and they would closely identify it with that. And I struggle with this because I don't really know. Again, guys, I don't let anything like PC me into submission or anything like that. It's simply that I genuinely want to understand it for what it really is from the perspective of people that are Jewish. And I just don't get as much access to that range of different perspectives. I just don't, not face to face. And so I am curious to have those conversations. And that's all I'm saying. Like, rather than me make an assumption about what I know or don't know about an issue like that, I'd rather approach it like this, to say that I'm aware that there is a split. And I've seen people provide very compelling arguments to say they disagree wholly with the state of Israel and many of the actions that go on within the Gaza Strip. And that they would, I wonder, when we see this rigid legislation right now that would address any questioning of Israel as, quote, anti-Semitism, how would those people be perceived if they themselves are Jewish and they have a perspective that doesn't support the state of Israel? Would you call them anti-Semitic? And I'm not asking this as a provocation. I'm asking, can we have a more intelligent conversation with this? Because I think this is a really complicated issue. And if we're going to have an intelligent perspective on it as a country, especially relative to military funding and aid, like, how do we make these decisions if we don't even understand these core fundamentals of how one culture perceives the other? Because I think I've heard a lot of the perspective from the Palestinian side of that particular element of it. And, and I've heard that perspective quite a bit. And again, I could afford to hear more perspectives from that group as well. So this isn't me drawing a position. I'm just, I'm putting it out there as something for us to think about. How can I say that, yeah, I'm definitely a person that respects their culture, that respects their right to worship. And I have an intellectual curiosity that's genuine. I'm just helping you guys understand why this is a struggle for me. I really do have an intellectual curiosity into their culture that's genuine, that I want to learn more. Some of it comes from Hollywood, actually, the film Pi, and how they were looking for a 200 and some digit God number, and how that correlates to things in my own research and how I had similar weird esoteric experiences. And so that got me thinking way more about the Sephiroth, Tree of Life, Jewish, religion as a general, but also as the Kabbalistic knowledge and things like that, and what that really translates to within general semantics, how we communicate symbols and words, how languages got created and how languages got corrupted. And what kind of power they have over the human psyche relative to all these things. Because I think a lot of that information is within the Kabbalah and within the Jewish mysticism. Good things are in their knowledge sets regarding these things. I think that would free a lot of people's minds. But again, I don't really know what my position should be on those types of things, because I feel like, yeah, people should have religious freedom. They should be able to live and let live. But at the same time, this is such a complicated issue that let me ask you this. Like, what if you learned that a whole separate group just co-opted a religion or a group of people that wasn't actually them and then did this sort of thing? Then how would you feel about it? It might change your entire perspective on whether or not something is a state. I'm not saying that happened with that, by the way, but I think some people hypothesize that, but I don't know. But anyways, yeah. And so that's all I'm saying, guys, is like we need to at least be open to more perspectives, because right now there's some pretty rigid legislation that's going on in America that I think is attempting to like associate anti-Semitism with questioning the state of Israel. And I think that that's a misnomer if I understand everything correctly. I think you can be a person that is in fact Jewish yourself and not support the state of Israel, just as well as you can be a very, friendly person to Jewish culture and be very warm to them and see their significance religiously and everything else like that, but also object to that and have a position that's not necessarily pro-Palestinian. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, I think there's so many different ways you can look at this that I hate to see us creating legislation within America that immediately draws attribution of anti-Semitism to a person that may have a completely different perspective on this that has zero to do with whether or not they dislike the Jewish culture or Jewish people. Okay. And so I kind of wanted to just say, can we just elevate above this, folks, and just encourage more intelligent conversations with one another so we can get past those things. That's what I would like to do when it comes to that, especially. Some of these other things, though, that are like the pronouns and whatever, I feel like there's like a different agenda behind that hasn't much to do with religion. I think that's way more to do with destabilizing countries by making us all question, whether or not we're men and women. I mean, that's a real basic way of destabilizing a country, guys, ladies and gentlemen, really. It is. It is. If you just don't even know how to have, regular courtship or have a relationship or how to whatever, and, people are all questioning what their real values are, whether or not they're a man or a woman. I mean, you combine that with all the psychotronic weapons, the dark orgone. Yeah. I mean, it gets to be some pretty serious things going on there. Yeah, guys, you know what? I was going to end this, but I feel like we should continue talking about this. Well, I just have some energy tonight for some strange reason. I don't want to end this too early. I don't know, guys. What do you think? Yeah, I feel like, though, if I get too deep into this, guys, I could lose my channel. That's all. I mean, honestly, I wanted to have this conversation for a long time, but they do so many things that remove my channel when I say the slightest of whatever. So I'm trying to approach this in a way where I don't think anybody can really draw that correlation to the information. It's really just me trying to say yeah, let's draw distinctions between defining these terms, because again, I don't even understand the term Zionism entirely, guys, or what that means to different people, and different groups have different terms for what that word means, so I don't know, but I feel like it's worth having a discussion about, and there should be places where that's safe to do without people feeling because I know I've done it even in this room where there's been times where people are like, hey, can you speak more on this topic? And I kind of said, yeah, I want to, but that could get me into significant trouble. So anyways, guys, I think I'm going to end it tonight, actually, because I think if I go on too long on this topic, it's gonna cause some problems. But I am going to return with a more structured bit of material, with more on the energy topics and things like that. This was more of a way to say let's think about what we're manifesting a little bit, and not let these media groups trick us into hating one another or having these sort of arguments over nothing, or things that really don't have the kind of meaning that they're assigning to it. You know what I'm saying? We can do better than this, and we can actually ascend out of this if we just sort of, and I've been doing it, guys. I've been practicing it, just focusing on something better, concentrating on life, concentrating on creation, focusing on just living and being, and eliminating a lot of the fake media cycle from my perception entirely whenever I can. And I've seen the benefits of it. I think things are changing for the better. So I'll be back very soon, guys, with another presentation, but I appreciate you joining tonight. Thanks.